If you need to translate text at scale in Python, Azure gives you two very different tools, and picking the wrong one costs you money and quality. Option 1 is Azure AI Translator, a dedicated neural machine translation service. Option 2 is a large language model like the ones in Azure OpenAI, which can also translate. In the next 5 minutes, I'll show you the Python for both, where each one wins, the cost and operations trade-offs, and a crisp rule for when to reach for which. Azure AI Translator is part of Azure AI Services. It supports more than 100 languages, gives you stable, deterministic output, automatic language detection, and a real-time text endpoint plus an asynchronous document translation feature. It's tuned for throughput and consistency. Azure OpenAI, by contrast, translates by prompting a general model. It shines when you need tone control, glossary-aware rewriting, or to translate and summarize in one call. But it's slower per request, non-deterministic unless you pin temperature, and you pay for both input and output tokens. Think specialist versus generalist. Here's the real-time text path with the Translator SDK. You create a client with your key and region, then call translate with target languages. One request can carry up to 1,000 text elements and the service auto-detects the source. This is the fast path, low latency, high concurrency, and a flat per character price. Batch your inputs into arrays rather than firing one call per string, and you'll cut overhead dramatically. For real scale, the synchronous text API is the wrong tool for whole files. Use asynchronous document translation. You drop source files into Blob storage. Kick off a batch job pointing at a source container and a target container, and Translator processes thousands of documents while preserving formatting in Word, PDF, and HTML. You poll for status and pull the translated files back out. This is the pattern when you're localizing a content library overnight rather than translating a chat message in real time. Now the honest trade-offs. Translator struggles when meaning depends on deep context, idioms, or a domain glossary you want applied intelligently. Its output is literal and consistent, which is exactly what you want for UI strings and legal text, but it won't rewrite tone. Azure OpenAI handles nuance and mixed instructions, but you'll fight latency at scale, token limits on long documents, rate limits measured in tokens per minute, and the risk of hallucinated or dropped content. For high volume, Translator is far more predictable. On cost, Translator bills per character translated, with a free tier and predictable scaling, so you can model spend directly from input size. Azure OpenAI bills per input and output token, and translation roughly doubles your token count because output mirrors input length, so a large library can get expensive fast. Operationally, Translator is simpler. One endpoint, built-in retries, no prompt engineering or output validation. With the LLM you own prompt versioning, output parsing, and guardrails. Always check current Azure pricing pages, because rates and tiers change. In practice, many teams combine both. Files land in Blob storage and trigger an Azure function. The function sends bulk content to AI Translator for the heavy lifting, then routes only the high-value or tone-sensitive segments to Azure OpenAI for a polished pass. Results go back to Blob storage for delivery. This gives you Translator's cost and throughput on the bulk, and the LLM's nuance only where it actually pays off. Here's the takeaway. Default to Azure AI Translator for high volume, predictable cost, and consistent output. Use the real-time text API for short strings and batch document translation for whole files. Reach for Azure OpenAI only when meaning, tone, or combined tasks justify the higher cost and operational weight, and even then, consider a hybrid. My one concrete next step: prototype your real workload through Translator's batch document feature, measure characters and latency, and only escalate the hard segments to a model. And recheck the Azure docs, since limits and pricing shift. If this helped, do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one. See you in the next video.